Hey, I'm gonna do a demo recreating this painting I made today. Everything from start to finish. And I'm gonna show you all the art supplies I use, and I'll have commission links for my art supplies in the description below. And yeah, so let's get into it. So to start off with, I always use these Bristol Paper Smooth. You have to get the smooth surface ones because they're smooth, and then vellum artist trading cards. So they're 2.5 by 3.5 inches. And all right, so I can work backwards um, pretty easily because most of my process is uh, going with the flow and seeing what works in the moment. So it's a lot easier for me to work backwards once I already have a finished piece. So let's see. Okay, so this piece is really interesting because it has so many tiny little branches with highlights going across the top here. So I had to think about what order I was going to make all the tree branches in, and that'll make more sense later because I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's first move my mic a little bit. So okay, alrighty. Okay, let's start. So start with the tree. Um, I saw this little woodpecker on one of my walks in the woods, and it was super freaking cute, so I had to draw him for this little video. So let's see. So in this painting, there's obviously the big tree in the back, and there's two semi-large trees in front. So try to block off, and then okay. I'm not too concerned about making an exact copy, more so that you get the general gist of like how this was made for the technical side. So I'm not gonna be too harsh on myself if like the tree branch is a little bit more to the left. I'm just not concerned about that. Okay. So one thing you'll notice is that I'm not going to draw in any of the leaves at all in the sketching and inking phase, because that's an acrylic layer on top of everything else towards the end. So let's also get the bird here. Now there was like a pile of leaves on top of the tree right here that kind of, that's why it's kind of lumpy and weird up there. So I'll have to add that back in. And this was interesting. So this little woodpecker, he had a bright red tuft of feathers on top, but because he was cast in shadows, you couldn't see it in the photo I took of him. So I don't add it in, even though it would make it more distinct. I still keep him in shadow. And the nice thing about little tree branches and stuff is like, unlike something like anatomy or like fingers, if you have the branches kind of off center or something, it doesn't really look that out of place if you were to have a tree branch a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, if that makes sense. Although um, it's important to like follow the branches through and make sure the branches make sense in a way, like where does this line lead, and not having it trail off into nothingness. So connecting it, making it look grounded. And let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. Now, another thing is I don't care about all of these lines, the little ones. I don't care about them overlapping, and that'll make more sense later in the demo. So there's another dark branch in the back right here. That gives it some extra dimension. So it looks like I made this gap in the tree a lot smaller in this version, but you know what? It'll be okay. It'll be right. It's going to look a little bit different, but the same principles will still apply to both. Okay. Now, that's a pretty good sketch. So now I'm going to ink it in. And I use microns because they don't smear with my alcohol markers. So sometimes some ink pens, they just totally cannot handle alcohol markers for some reason, and they'll bleed. But microns are like a really bright, like a vibrant dark black, and I really like them. But you can use other brands. Just test out and see if they do well against alcohol markers for my type of process. So okay. So all right. One thing about doing everything traditionally is there's a lot of areas that could be expedited or faster digitally, but I personally feel like my art loses a certain charm when I try to draw digitally. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. There's like a sparkle that's missing. But it's basically there's a learning curve with going from traditional to digital. But for the time being, I think my best type of work is on paper. So I deal with the slightly more tedious and long process. Now, I'm definitely not drawing in every single branch that's in this version, but that's okay. It's really easy to add in the little branches, and you'll see. Okay. So okay. We're cooking. I don't know. Part of me wants to fill in the silent gaps, but the other part of me is like, I don't know. It's not that kind of video. It's just a long form tutorial, so I don't know. I'm trying my best here. Okay. So I'm going to give that a second to dry. If I immediately went in with an eraser with Micron pen specifically, this black ink would smear all over it. So I'm forced to give it just a little moment of reprieve. So I'm just going to do that. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not worried about adding in any of the leaves. It's just another element that I try to take out as many tedious steps as I can. So if I don't have to shade and color around the leaves, if I'm choosing to add that in last, then I don't have to do it. So that'll make more sense again, like I said, in a little bit. All right, let's test out if this is good enough. So going in. And it's really important with this kind of process. If you leave any pencil lines and you go on top of it with an alcohol marker, it like cements it, and you can't erase and take out the pencil lines. So once you lay alcohol markers on top of pencil, on it just doesn't come out. So it's really important to just really buff it out. Make sure you get all the pencil lines out. Okay. So this process is going to look a little goofy at first, but I'm just recreating what I did here. So I was like, okay, I am not like, especially with doing gradients with alcohol markers, it is really difficult to, all of these tiny little spaces, it's really difficult to get a nice smooth gradient. And I don't know how to describe it. Basically, yeah, right about there. And then this was B05 from Copic, and this is PB9 from Ohuhu Markers. Basically, get a medium dark blue, get a slightly lighter dark blue, and then this one is from Just Art. This is 3 different alcohol marker brands, but I just, mix and match and use whatever I have on hand. This is B170 from Just Art. Basically, with alcohol markers, I do not like using this thing. This is called a colorless blender. I never figured out how to use it properly, which is kind of silly because I use these things all the time. So when I blend with alcohol markers, it's really important to do it kind of fast when you know you need a smooth gradient. Sometimes I find it's not like watercolor where it can just reactivate and you can do a smooth blend whenever you feel like it or blend things out. You can you can move the pigment around, but the best time to get it to get a smooth gradient, like best case scenario, you get colored pencils and you can buff out anything with that. But there's not going to be any colored pencils in this process. So as soon as I can, I switch. I keep everything in my hand. As soon as I can, I buff it out. Try as hard as I can to just, And then I remember for this specific process, I colored in the tree here with the light blue. And you can see I'm impatient, so there's a little bit of a smear from the... Oh, there's a lot of smear from the freaking Micron pens, but whatever. It's all good. Okay. Alright. Now I'm going to try to remember exactly what I did color-wise. So I have everything laid out that I experimented with. Okay. So first I went in on the tree and I tried to find the darkest areas to shade in. So I just played around with a couple different markers, and this is way too light, but in my process it's easier to go from light to dark than it is dark to light. So I always feel out the darkest shadows with a lighter marker, and then once I feel confident, I'm like, okay, I like the shadows here, I think that looks good. Then I go back in and make a more permanent decision with a darker color. So I'm like, okay, that looks good. But since I already have the exact thing, I don't need to play around too much with just figuring out the shadows, the composition. And I'm not worried at all about all these little branches. If I was, this thing would take hours versus this version of the process. You gotta pick and choose your battles. That's how I always describe it. These things are so tiny, like you just use a little gel pen to get the highlight. You don't need to sit there, because like versus like going like, okay, I gotta go right around it, really tediously. No. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not like rambling and people are like, what is Irish talking about? What do you mean you're not? I don't know. So let me know if I'm, I don't know. I want to make an actually good tutorial. So let me know if it's a little confusing. Okay. So then there's a little bit of green in this tree. I used, oh my gosh, I forgot to say. So these are both, these are from Touch New, which I don't even know if they still make markers or like they're out of stock all the time. So these are like WG5 or just warm gray tones. And this one is from Q4. Can you tell I do a lot of TikTok deals? A lot of TikTok markers. This is GG3. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. The downside to using a bunch of different alcohol marker brands, which is basically whoever's willing to collaborate with me, I'll take them up on it because it's the opportunity to get some more markers, is that every single alcohol marker brand has their own labeling system and also has their own slight variations of colored caps that is different than the actual pigment. So I don't know, it's a little goofy, but in my personal opinion, Copic markers, let me find one. Copic markers are still the king of Five Nights at Freddy's. Sorry. They're the king of alcohol marker brands. Nothing beats them, in my opinion. And all these companies are trying, and I hope they keep trying so that they lower the prices of Copics. But nothing comes close to beating Copics, in my opinion. But these other ones are great. And especially doing these little studies. I mean, they all kind of like have the same properties at some level. But Copics, like, I don't know what the technology is, but they just blend the smoothest. But I'm not picky either. Okay, I'm just rambling. Okay, so another thing I did is I added some texture to the bark of the tree here. So I'm just going back in with a Micron pen. So the pigments of alcohol markers, you can lighten and darken them a lot, but the ink does not lighten or darken no matter how much you press alcohol markers into it. So when I want to make sure that an area stays the darkest area in one of my compositions, I go back in and I like cement that with ink versus using like a really dark alcohol marker, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it will stay the darkest area because of blending. And I hope I'm making sense. Now, it took about 40 minutes to do this without talking, or at least this version. So with talking, I'm not sure how long this one will take. And I'm making sure to note that a lot of these areas will be covered up with leaves later, so I'm not too concerned about some of these areas getting tons of detail. Okay, okie dokie. Oh, no. Okay, how's that looking? Mm. Alright, I like that. Okay, so I need to go back in with some more texture lines for the tree bark. So I'm going back in with WG9. I'm not expecting people to get Q4, Touch New, Copic, Ohuhu, like to get this exact process. That's ludicrous. But just get like similar colors, like a dark warm gray, a muted green, that sort of thing. But if I miss any specific marker colors or anything, let me know and I will definitely get back to you. So if you want the exact process and I forget something, I'll let you know. And then I think I went back in. Yeah, I went back. Oh, I went back in with a Copic N9 for the darkest part of the tree. And like I said, I don't really care about covering up these little branches, but with the bigger tree branches, I do care enough to not fully cover those up. Okay. Okay, what I'm doing right there is I'm going back in with this WG5 and I'm just softening up the edges of this darker color. I love using soft edges. I dislike using harsh lines. I don't know. I always go back in and feather the edges basically of my shading. Okay. So that looks good. And let's go back in. So I added some texture lines over here with green. And I also added them here. Well, actually, I'll probably need to go back. I'm not going to worry about that because I think there's something else to my process. So now what I'm going to do is I'm using a gel pen from Lenguo, color gel pen. And what I'm doing here is a special technique, which is I'm not letting it dry fully. Oh, actually, let me do this. I'm going to color in the bird with this darker here. I'm going to let that dry for a second. And then I'm going to start coloring in these tree branches. And now I care about overlapping lines with the tree branches here. Okay, with the bird, this is what I did for the original. There. That's basically what I did. So I took the gel pen and I didn't let it dry fully and I wiped part of it with my finger to give it a slight, to basically lighten the opacity of the gel pen on the bird here. And now we're going to go in and I'm choosing now which tree branches are on top of the others. So so this line right here, as an example, I'm not going through it with the gel pen. I'm choosing to take a break with it and have this one be on top. I'll do another example of that because I feel like I didn't say that well. So this branch is underneath this one. So this one I'm doing a strong line and then I'm doing segmented lines for the branches underneath. Segmented lines. Now, it's not going to be an exact copy because the tree branches are like in slightly different spots, different widths, but yeah, it's just supposed to be a demo, like the process, but I'm not beating myself up for it not being an exact copy. Okay. And this line's on top. And Now, usually I'd have music blasting or a YouTube video or something to take my mind off of the tedious boredom of doing some straight lines over and over again. But for this demo, I will just sometimes break out into humming songs. Okay. Just gonna playing around with that. Okay, and I forgot. All right, so this isn't too bad, but I forgot about this darker branch in the back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just doing this, and then I'm gonna wait for it to dry for a second, and then I'm gonna go back in and redo some of these gel pen lines. Not too big of a deal. And then for these bigger tree branches right here, I took this Funto Click Link acrylic paint marker. You just need a, what color even is this? It's like a beige. And then yeah, basically just did that. And then I went back in and added some highlight textures to the tree branch or tree bark. And I used the tip of this brush pen to do different types of dots. And let's see here. And then I know I went back in with a 0.5 to add some more dimension to these tree branches. Give them some more weight. Give them some more weight. Okay. And I could honestly add some more texture lines. Okay, this is another line in the back I forgot. So let's do this one. So, alright. So it goes like this. And then it blends out into a lighter branch over here. Like that, kinda. Alright, so this is an interesting step. So this is a mixed media approach with alcohol markers and acrylic paint. So I've added this light area of acrylic onto these tree branches, and I'm going to go back in with alcohol markers on top of the acrylic paint here. So things get kind of tricky. So the blending techniques are different on top of acrylic paint versus on the paper. But for this, where it's really simple, where it's just one layer of pigment on top, it's not too crazy. But alcohol markers fundamentally act different and blend differently when it's on top of acrylic paint versus on paper. Okay. And then I also had some small texture lines here. Okay, it's... Alright. Now for the interesting part. It's basically the same. Oh, and then I forgot there was like an interesting branch that was like really dark, like a dark black. The way the shadow was, and it was kind of it was just don't know, like something like when you use references from real life, sometimes things don't look as intuitive as I would make it if I was drawing it like from my imagination. So some of these branches, like I wouldn't draw them because I'm like, I don't know. I think it's really important to break up. Oh shoot, I forgot to let that dry. So did you see that? I tried to add ink, but because the acrylic paint hasn't dried, it just smeared everywhere. So I'm just gonna wait on that for a second. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna need to come back to that, and hopefully I don't forget about it. But I'm gonna start on the leaves here. So this is a acrylic marker. There's a lot of acrylic paint marker companies on TikTok, and a lot of them they all say like they're an acrylic marker, but they don't have like distinct labels. So this is one of those where it's like it just says acrylic. Okay, so this is another like orangey light beige, and basically, this is the start of the leaves. Yeah, the terrifying part of this part is like you can't sit there and sketch everything. I mean, you could go on with pencil lines on top and then I don't know. I just go right for it. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes I ramble and I'm like I like do half thoughts, but I need to just give you like full thoughts. Sorry. Sorry, I'm rambling. Okay. Okay. So, with this composition, there were some leaves that were like more dead than others. There were some like really dark crumpled leaves. So the base of that was with a Nike Pro Umber. There's only like 2 of those in this composition. So now I have to wait for that to really dry, so I can even freaking. It's not as bad as watercolor. Watercolor sometimes you have to let like dry overnight, and it's just maddening. But I can handle the wait times with this type of process. Oil paintings I could never do. It takes so long for oil paint to dry. It's maddening. Okay. So I'm trying to remember my exact process. Okay. So this is going to be the weird part of blending alcohol markers on top of acrylic paint and how it acts differently to just paper by itself. So I'm trying to see. Okay. So these are both Copics. This is YR07 and YR15. Are these dry yet? No. Actually, while I'm waiting for that to dry, I can go back in with this branch over here. Yeah, I kind of messed up the tip of this marker because it has acrylic paint that's dried on it. So if that ever happens, I just, do that until it wears off the dried acrylic paint. Okay. So I'm going back in, adding some texture, some lines. Okay. Alright, that's good enough for now. Okay. How has this been 34 minutes? That's crazy. Okay. So these leaves all have like dark and light areas where they kind of blend into each other. Okay. So basically I take this darker orange like this. Is this the right orange? Maybe it was this one. Yeah, it was this one. It wasn't that. It was YR27. And then I take the lighter orange and it blends super funky compared to on paper. And that's basically the base of the leaf. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just way different than on paper. It's kind of like if you've ever used Yupo paper, it's like that a little bit. I don't even know if they still make Yupo paper. Okay. So I just choose one area of the leaf to go from darkest to lightest. And sometimes I just do it in a batch instead of having to open and close and open and close. I'll just do a couple at a time like that. So then I don't have to... Anywhere where I can save a little bit of time in this process, I try without sacrificing quality. Okay. So before these dry, that's a little risky. I did a lot at once. Just blend it. All right. And then there's also a technique where there's acrylic paint on the tip of this marker now. So it can actually have other qualities where it can be more opaque on top of this paper as well. It also has the chance of kind of ruining the marker, so I usually don't like doing that. But okay. Alright, this part doesn't need to dry as much as it needs to dry when it's like acrylic paint. So this part now is using a Micron, an orange Micron. I really love using Micron's colored pen series. I freaking love Micron. So now there's all of these like texture lines on the leaf. So I'm just going in like that. So a lot of my process is just experimenting and making new methods as I go for each piece. So it's really important for me to do this demo today while I still remember the exact type of markers I used and the exact process, because I will kind of forget the exact method. It's not like set in stone. It's just whatever works in the moment. Okay. So then it looks like I also put a little bit of this on these guys. So I did a little bit of this brown here, here, here. Just a little bit here and there. Okay. And there's more green in this one. I didn't do as much green, and I'm skimping on the texture. So I could go back in and add. Okay. So then I go back in with that black Micron again, and I just add some textures, some texture lines and shading to these leaves. These are still wet. Oh no! So I didn't let that dry long enough, so. I try to use the thinnest amount of acrylic paint as possible because I don't like to sit here and wait for it to dry. Patience is key, and patience is a virtue, right? But, I don't know. Okay. So. Okay. And this piece is so tiny. Some of these lines, like if this was blown up into a way bigger piece, I would do a lot more texture lines in all the leaves. But because this is so tiny, I can get away with doing some goofier stuff. So now I'm going to go back in and add some of these branches that are just singular black little lines in the distance. And I saved that step for last because I used the black outlines as a guideline to see like where branches are. So some of these would be so difficult to determine, like, okay, is this in the front or back? So I save these little lines for last just to give me a little less headache and confusion trying to figure out, like, okay, did I mean for that line to be in the front or behind? And so yeah. Alright. Alright, as it's wrapping up, it does look a little different. It is... There's some more dark shading that I didn't really do here. So I can see if I can just try to buff that up. Yeah, definitely right by the bird there's some more dark shading. Yeah. That's basically the thought process on how I did this one, although this leaf looks way lamer than that one, so let's see if I can... Okay. Alright, that's basically... Oh gosh, it looks so lame. That's okay. It looks awesome, actually. Okay. So, that's basically the methodology, the thought process, and the exact technical demo of what I did to create this one. Let me know if you have any questions, or if anything didn't make sense, or if I rambled about something and you're like, Iris, what did you mean by this part here? I can definitely fix up and tidy up this process a little bit more. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for watching.